Today's topic is PCI DSS 3.0 compliance and the Oracle E-Business Suite. For those of you not familiar with what exactly PCI is, it's the payment card industry, and DSS is the Data Security Standard. As of a couple months ago, PCI released a new version, so they upgraded from 2.0 to 3.0. And so this presentation is based off of a white paper that Integrigy developed back in 2008 to help E-Business Suite customers with their PCI compliance. In the last couple of weeks, due to the update to PCI, we've actually updated the white paper now, which will reflect PCI DSS 3.0. So all those on and attending today will actually receive a copy of the white paper. We'll be emailing that out along with a copy of this presentation probably tomorrow. So you'll be able to receive that and kind of go through and get a lot more detail than we can present in a 1-hour webinar. So today the topic will work through both PCI at a high level and then also take PCI and delve into the Oracle E-Business Suite. And what do you specifically have to do to make an Oracle E-Business Suite environment PCI DSS compliant? And we'll talk about, in general, things that you need to do. We'll talk about protecting credit card data. And then we'll kind of go through some of the key PCI DSS requirements. There's 12 key requirements. We'll actually walk through some of those and have a little bit of a discussion to say what you have to do to match and meet each requirement. And then we'll finally open it up to questions and answers at the end. Before we get started, a little bit of background about Integrigy. Integrigy was founded in 2001, and we specialize in Oracle E-Business Suite or in Oracle Database Security. There's two sides of Integrigy. One, we do products. So we've got a product, AppSentry, that helps verify and validate PCI compliance and also security of your E-Business Suite environment. And then we also have another product called AppDefend, which is actually an application firewall that's specialized for E-Business Suite, and it actually meets one of the PCI requirements. Then we also have security assessment services and compliance services. So one of the things we do is actually work with a lot of different Oracle customers and work with them to make sure that their environments are PCI compliant. So we'll actually do pre and post PCI compliance assessments on site at different clients. So enough about Integrigy. This will all be about PCI and E-Business Suite moving forward. So I wanted to first give you a little bit of overview of PCI. Some of you probably aren't that familiar with PCI at a deep level. So there's kind of a couple different terms you have to know. PCI was formed back in 2006 by the major credit card brands. So the 5 major brands are American Express, Discover, JCB, MasterCard, and Visa. At that time and prior, they actually all had different security programs in place. And the merchants were kind of complaining at that point, saying, well, I have to comply with Visa, and I have to comply with MasterCard, and your programs are different. And they formed the PCI Security Standards Council, which unifies this different security programs into a unified program. And in order to quantify that program, they actually published the Data Security Standard, so DSS. And that's really what our topic will be, focusing in on the DSS requirements and that key document. And in order to meet DSS requirements for many merchants, PCI Council then went through and said there's going to be qualified security assessors and approved scanning vendors. And qualified security assessors are organizations that can come on site and actually validate your PCI compliance. Approved scanning vendors go through and actually run tools against your external IP addresses to make sure that there's no known vulnerabilities, major misconfigurations in your external environments. And depending on the size of your organization, how many credit card transactions you process, you may actually have to work with a QSA or a approved scanning vendor. As a special note in this presentation, Integrigy is not a qualified security assessor, nor are we an approved scanning vendor. Our purpose in major business is working with Oracle E-Business Suite. We're very narrowly focused. We believe we're one of the top security experts on Oracle E-Business Suite, and we don't do a lot of network work trying to secure servers. We focus in on Oracle, and that's kind of our expertise. And what we're presenting as part of this presentation today is our expertise on Oracle E-Business Suite. So we work very closely with QSAs and ASVs in order to help environments. So if you do work with QSA, they find a lot of findings in your Oracle E-Business Suite environment, we would then assist you with trying to remediate those and make sure that your environment is secure. So a quick structure about PCI. PCI has a couple different components at work. So there's the Security Standards Council that develops the standards. There is a PCI DSS standard that we'll be referencing extensively through this presentation today. But there are also a number of other documents, audit procedures, scanning requirements, questionnaires. And what happens with those actual documents is those are what gets turned into your acquiring banks or the credit card brands in order to validate your compliance. So if you're a very large vendor, you would actually get a report on compliance called a ROC from a QSA, and that would actually be turned into your acquiring bank in order to validate your PCI compliance. So there's a couple different pieces here, but we're going to focus in today just looking at the PCI DSS Security Standard directly and how those requirements relate to the e-business suite, and not talk about the entire structure. So let's start talking about PCI DSS. So 3.0 is out now. You have about a year to change from 2.0 to 3.0, but there's not many significant changes. And really for eBusiness Suite, there was nothing major that changed from 2.0 to 3.0. So we'll kind of talk about PCI DSS version agnostic here. There won't be anything that you'd say would change significantly from this presentation. But it's basically 12 stringent requirements, and then there's 200 sub-requirements. The key is all the requirements are mandatory. There's nothing that's optional. All 200 requirements you have to meet. And the goal of PCI DSS is to secure your credit card data. That is the emphasis. It does have a very strong emphasis on general IT security controls because they want the entire environment to be as secure as possible. But the main goal of PCI DSS is to secure the credit card data. If you're doing that, you're probably doing security pretty well already because it does have a focus on trying to improve your general IT security controls. But remember, it's only a narrowed focus, and that does have an impact with the Oracle eBusiness Suite because you have to secure an entire environment that may include all financials, HR, even though it's just a small part of the overall application. So in terms of PCI compliance, it is dependent somewhat on the card brand, merchant type transactions. So you do actually have to do different things for different brands and those things. And one of the interesting things about PCI DSS is, yes, you go through this rigmarole and you might have to do on-site assessments or questionnaires, but really the only time your PCI DSS compliance is thoroughly assessed is in case of a breach. Because if you do have a data breach, as you're maybe looking at Target right now, what happens is a team of forensic auditors comes in, and what matters is the findings from that audit. It doesn't matter that you were compliant forever and you returned in your reports on compliance and you had a shining star every single time. But if you have a breach, what will happen is they'll go through your environment with a fine-tooth comb and look, why did that breach occur? Were there items in terms of PCI requirements that were not compliant at the time of the breach? And that audit then will determine your liability. Because if you are PCI compliant and it's determined that you were, and there was nothing that was caused by the breach being out of compliance, that's what determines your liability. So if you're out of compliance, you have significant liability. If you were fully in compliance, and that's kind of hard to do, to be breached and still be compliant, your liability is limited. So that's kind of an interesting point about PCI is it's only truly assessed as if you do get breached. So no matter what you do at this point, yeah, you have to make it look good. You want to get a clean bill of health, but it's truly assessed at the time of breach. So I won't go very deep into this, but depending on what you're doing with eBusiness Suite and how many transactions you're processing per year determines on what you have to do in terms of PCI compliance. Most Oracle eBusiness Suite environments we work with process maybe 20,000 to 1 million credit card transactions a year. Typically, most organizations are not putting massive amounts of credit card transactions through an eBusiness Suite environment. There are some cases, though. We've worked with level 2 merchants in the past, and they are pushing a lot of credit card transactions through an eBusiness Suite environment. But most organizations are doing 20,000, 50,000, maybe 100,000 transactions within the Oracle eBusiness Suite. And typically, it's a manufacturing organization that has a small parts division that is doing online sales of replacement parts and things like that. So it's a very easy thing to do in Oracle eBusiness Suite. But the problem now is you have to meet all the requirements. This is a fairly significant level of effort. If you're a level 1 merchant or a level 4, the key is you have to match every requirement. The goal is And what you're having to do is just do an annual self-assessment questionnaire and return that to your acquiring bank. But that basically says you have to match all the requirements. So the key takeaway here is no matter what level of compliance you are, you have to meet all 12 PCI DSS requirements. They are mandatory. Even though the self-assessment questionnaire only talks about several of them, you have to meet all 12 requirements. And this is a very high bar for any environment to meet. So that's kind of a brief background about PCI DSS. I didn't want to go too in depth, but at least give you a little bit of flavor, a little bit of our background, where we're coming from when we're talking about PCI DSS. So now let's delve a little bit about Oracle E-Business Suite and PCI DSS. So usually the first question that comes up is in terms of scope. PCI DSS is very stringent in what's in scope, what's out of scope. And it's very clear what's in scope. Anything that stores, processes, or transmits cardholder data. So if your Oracle E-Business Suite environment touches a customer credit card number, even if it's just flowing through the system, that system has to be PCI DSS compliant. And it doesn't matter of size, transaction volume, if you're doing 10 credit cards or 6 million credit cards. Your entire environment has to be then PCI DSS compliant. There's a lot of things you can do in terms of limiting scope, reducing scope, moving things out of scope. So if you do tokenization, you're using tokenization in Oracle E-Business Suite, you don't have to be PCI DSS compliant. But if you're seeing live credit card numbers, the actual credit card number flow through an environment, it is in scope. And there's no way around that. A lot of people kind of fight this, but this is the way it works. And you have to be compliant. And compliance is a huge hurdle to jump over. It can be very costly in terms of time and effort. So when we talk about these 12 requirements, the 12 requirements are laid out. So if you go to the PCI Security Council website and go over under documents, there's a PCI DSS 3.0 document. It's quite a few pages long, and it goes through each individual requirement and talks about what you have to do to comply. The document is over 100 pages, so it's a fairly lengthy standard in terms of what has to be done. And so what we've done now is taken the PCI DSS 3.0 requirements and actually mapped it out to an Oracle E-Business Suite environment. And so if you think about it, you've got basically 5 different layers that you have to think about. You've got the network, server, database, Oracle E-Business Suite, and basically policies and procedures at the end. So for Oracle E-Business Suite, fortunately, there's a number of things in the PCI DSS that are more policy-related, firewall-related, installing antivirus, protecting your wireless networks, that aren't directly applicable to your E-Business Suite environment. But here you can kind of see there are a number of requirements that meet and have to be satisfied within the database in the Oracle E-Business Suite. And so now if we take this to the next level, and we start looking at the compliance effort. So what we've done at Integrigy is actually take every single requirement and map it out to the Oracle database and Oracle E-Business Suite and counted up those requirements and then assigned an effort level of high, medium, or low. And as you can see, there's a number of areas that take a significant amount of effort to make Oracle E-Business Suite compliant. So what we've done is here, so if you go look under number 3 for E-Business Suite to protect cardholder data, there are 6 major requirements under Section 3, and most of those are high level of effort to satisfy. And some are pretty simple. If you're kind of regularly testing security, that's a little bit easier to accomplish, but you can see it's a kind of varied amount in terms of effort that's required to meet each PCI requirement. So now if you're approaching PCI DSS, so you've got credit cards in your environment, you need to meet PCI compliance. Your acquiring bank has kind of come down on you and said, well, we're going to stop processing credit card transactions for you unless you start providing us your self-assessment questionnaires and you get on the road to full PCI DSS compliance. In order to do that, most organizations are kind of stuck. It's a very large task to do that in a large IT environment. So PCI Council actually came up with a prioritized approach. And they came up with 6 different milestones to say, well, we know you can't do it overnight, so if you're going to go down the road towards PCI DSS compliance, here's some milestones that you should try to meet. What should you do first? What's most important to us? And most important to the PCI Council was let's limit the most sensitive data. So if you look at the Target breach, they lost the magnetic stripe data. That is very valuable because if I can grab the magnetic stripe data off the back of the card, I can actually create new credit cards. And that creates a lot of fraud. They also wanted to limit the data retention. So they don't want you to have 7 years worth of credit card data online. If you only have 18 months online and you get breached, well, you lost 18 months. You didn't lose 7 years worth of credit card data. So that was kind of the #1 milestone for the PCI Council. Then they start talking about protecting networks. Start looking at your payment applications. Set up your access controls and login monitoring. And what's interesting is it's not until milestone 5 is protect cardholder data. So one of the key tenets of PCI DSS is that credit card data, and specifically credit card numbers, should be encrypted in your environment. But what's interesting is within the prioritized approach, that's not till milestone 5. And the reason for that is that it's very difficult to encrypt credit card data in most environments. Usually you have to rewrite applications, you have to make a lot of changes, have to take place. And then finally milestone 6 is make sure everything else is in place at the end of the day. For Integrigy, what we've done is developed a PCI methodology for our clients to help them walk through. And our methodology differs pretty dramatically from the PCI Council's prioritized approach in terms of we're looking at where's the highest security risks and what's the lowest effort that you can do to get some of these requirements satisfied. And actually in Oracle E-Business Suite, you can actually enable the encryption fairly quickly. It does take some effort and some testing, but you can get that encryption enabled. So now you've actually reduced the risk in terms of breach. So if someone does breach your database, steals the tables with the credit card data, that's encrypted. So they actually have to then try to find the encryption keys, and it becomes much more difficult. The #2 item we like to look at is at least harden the configuration. You can do that somewhat easily. There's some easy tasks there, so there's some pretty difficult tasks, but looking at passwords, changing some initialization parameters, those are things that you can do and actually dramatically improve the security of the environment. Applying security patches, especially if you're running any of the external modules like iStore, iSupplier, iRecruitment, it's very important to get the security patches going. Step 4 that we typically look at is logging and monitoring. That becomes a little bit more difficult. There's a lot of different logs within the Oracle Business Suite. Turning on database auditing is a little bit more tricky. You have to have all that information go to an external logging server. That becomes a little bit more of a challenge, so it takes a little bit more time. So that's why we push it off towards phase 4. One of the more difficult areas in terms of Oracle Business Suite and trying to be PCI compliant is purging credit card numbers and actually scrambling that data in test and development environments. There is no standard methodology or tools from Oracle to do the purging, so it's very difficult to purge out just credit card numbers without purging out transactions. Scrambling, you actually have to find out where all the credit cards are. So that's just kind of our approach from Integrigy that we work with our clients on how to approach PCI compliance. Because this is not a very easy task. It takes a lot of effort to be compliant, and you have to kind of approach it in a systematic way because there's a lot of different moving parts here. The application technology stack is difficult, and you have to merge this with your overall PCI compliance effort within the organization. So what are some of the key tenets about E-Business Suite and PCI compliance? Well, first, the standard installation is not PCI DSS compliant. That's very important. Out of the box, there's very little PCI DSS compliance. Even though there's some features that support PCI DSS within the application, that's all disabled by default. And so even though Oracle has done an okay job adding some of the key features in, some of the things you need to meet PCI DSS compliance, none of that's enabled by upon standard installation. You actually have to go through and turn everything on. And finally, PCI compliance is not just this one-time task. You don't go through and just kind of flip a bunch of switches, turn it on, and you're PCI compliance. PCI compliance is a daily, ongoing process. It's reviewing logs. It's making sure the encryption is working correctly. It's the way you do customizations. There's a lot of aspects in terms of just general IT controls, the way you do change management. All that's integrated within PCI DSS and very critical to having a fully compliant environment every single day of every year. So that was kind of some background about EBS and PCI DSS, and now what we're going to do is go very deep and a little technical and really walk through what are some of the requirements and how do you meet those requirements in a PCI DSS in an Oracle Business Suite environment. And what I'm going to do is turn it over to Mike Miller, who's one of our consulting experts who's walked through a number of customers on PCI DSS compliance to talk more about how to actually protect credit card data in the Business Suite environment.
Thank you, Steve. We will go through a few slides here talking about the specific mechanics of how Oracle is implementing the cardholder protection within Release 12 here, and then spend a couple of minutes on how to enable it, at least give it an overview. As Steve was referring to, the material that we're presenting here is well documented in the white paper that we'll be sending out shortly. So first and foremost, we're talking about requirement 3.4, which is to render the PAN unreadable. So for the Oracle eBusiness Suite, what we're talking about is encryption of the primary account number. The recommendation that we're making is that you use the native Oracle eBusiness Suite functionality here as opposed to transparent data encryption TDE. TDE is a very strong and robust solution. However, for PCI purposes, the native encryption here flows a little bit more seamlessly. So we're going to touch on a few different parts of the mechanics here, but first and foremost, the encryption solution supporting 3.4 here is supported by the Oracle Wallet feature. And for those of you in the audience familiar with Oracle Wallets, this is one and the same technology that is supporting SSL and TDE.
And just so everyone's familiar, the PCI DSS document has some unique terminology. So when they talk about credit card number, they call it primary account number, or PAN. So we'll kind of try to refer both to credit card number, but it's also PAN is the terminology. So for those of you kind of wondering what the word PAN was, no, we're not doing anything, any cookie utensils. It's all primary account numbers.
So with Release 12, Oracle introduced the Oracle Payments module. And specifically what this is doing for credit card and PCI protection is the introduction with Oracle Payments of the Secure Payments Repository. So you could think of this as sitting on top of the trading community architecture. So the trading community architecture is defining your customers, your vendors, and the Secure Payments Repository is then defining the credit cards or bank accounts for those parties. So after you define the customer, the payment information is stored separately in or inside of Oracle Payments. So this consolidation is key. We're going to be talking about this in a few different steps in the next few slides here. But the key point on this slide is that only those products listed at the bottom are making use of the Secure Payment Repository. The key point here is commonly we're asked this question with regard to iExpense and corporate cards. So the point on the prior slide that we can make is that Oracle talks about, certainly in the Oracle documentation, the difference between external and internal accounts. So an external account would be a credit card or bank account associated with a customer or a vendor versus an internal account, which is, let's say, defined within payroll for employee direct deposits or corporate cards that your employees might be using to support the business. So corporate cards, since they're part of payables, are indeed protected within the solution here. That said, you should seek an opinion from your counsel in your card issue as to whether or not you are technically required to encrypt it. So just to say it again, you may or might not be required to encrypt your corporate card, but if you do enable the standard functionality here, they will be protected. And this is also covered in the white paper.
This is one of the areas, being a consultant, you can actually save customers a lot of money. We actually get quite a few calls that from our clients saying, oh, we have corporate cards and we now have to be fully PCI compliant. And oh, we say, oh, by the way, that'll probably cost you maybe $250,000 to go through that type of effort to make a e-business suite fully compliant in terms of just consulting your internal effort, maybe some additional software products. And then we get into the discussion and say, well, it's only corporate cards you're looking to do. Most likely you don't have to be PCI DSS compliant unless you're accepting external credit cards. And so a lot of our clients are very happy when you can tell them you can save them a lot of money by, oh, by the way, you don't have to be compliant. So this is one of those areas that if you're only talking about PCI compliance and you're only on this call because you've got internal corporate cards, you really don't have to be PCI DSS compliant. You should probably make sure and validate that information, but every time we've ever done this with one of our clients, the answers always come back from like American Express or Visa or the issuer of those cards that no, you don't have to be PCI DSS compliant just for those cards. So this is one area where you can save yourself some money and some effort by not doing it.
All right, with regard to the, we'll say, specific implementation of the secure payment repository that you see reflected here, this is a logical data flow showing the various modules in blue here that are the, we'll say, subscribing applications, the red transaction tables for those, and then what you see in green are the tables supporting the secure, or within the secure payment repository. Key here is the IBY credit card table, which actually holds the actual card number, the primary account number, and other key pieces of information commonly found either on the front or the back of your credit card. So with Release 12, all of the definition of cardholder data has been consolidated into the secure payments repository, specifically into the table IBY credit card. The next slide that we're going to talk to will go a little bit more into detail of the mechanics of the encryption. So to draw your attention to on the upper right-hand corner there, we have the IBY credit card table. How does information how is it put in and how is it read out? So it's put in through the, we'll say, describing applications. And how the encryption actually works is that the IBY SIS security option defines the setup option, specifically the location of the Oracle wallet. And not only does the white paper, but we're going to go through in some of the preceding slides some of those options. But for the sake of this slide, the location of the wallet is then read, and also the password to the wallet. So what Oracle is doing here is implementing a chained encryption approach, in that the wallet, the Oracle wallet, because it's removed and stored outside the database, is offering one layer of protection. So the system master key is stored in the wallet. The subkeys stored in the table SIS security subkeys are then actually the keys that are used to encrypt the individual credit cards. So the flow would go as such, in that if I'm in a subscribing application, the data is going to be read out through a series of APIs. Those API calls are doing a few different things. They are looking for the location of the wallet, getting the wallet key, decrypting the subkey, and then the subkey is then used to decrypt the actual card data. So this meets several PCI requirements. First and foremost, the actual encryption that is being used is triple DES, and it's a 156-bit key or double key, which it's a triple key, which more than exceeds the PCI requirement for a double key. The separation of the master key outside the database also meets several different PCI requirements. And the net whole of this, it gives you a lot of tools for managing your PCI implementation. So one of these would be with the creation of test and development instances. One of the steps that you need to take to protect PCI is the rotation of your encryption key. So you can't have the same encryption key in test as well as in production. So what you would want to do then is Oracle gives you the ability to only go to one place. You go and actually rotate the key by creating a new Oracle wallet. This also gives you the ability, because the wallet itself is password protected, to set up a separation of duties. For example, you could have your DBAs either with or without access to the Oracle wallet password. So we'll make a few different recommendations further about how this all works. But just in summary here, Oracle is using a chained key approach with a triple DES encryption, and the actual encryption key is stored outside. The system master key is actually stored outside in the Oracle wallet. So 3 steps to enable card encryption inside of the eBusiness Suite, specifically R12. And Steve was talking about how, though it is somewhat simple to go through these 3 steps, much of the difficulty with PCI is the follow-on work. But that said, let's talk about these 3 steps. So step number 1 is to create the payment wallet. Step number 2 is to then go through and to the user interface and not only locate or give the location of the payment wallet, but then to refer to some other PCI requirements. And last but not least, we need to run the concurrent programs to encrypt any existing cardholder data. So step number 1, we talked a little bit about wallets, but the recommendation I'd like to draw attention to really is if you are using wallets already for SSL or possibly even PDE, our recommendation is that you don't share wallets. Oracle makes this recommendation. Integrigy Corporation, we would strongly recommend dedicating single-purpose wallets. You also need to be very careful with your wallets and backing them up separately. You don't want to back up the wallet along with the backup of the Oracle eBusiness Suite database itself. You also want to be very careful with the wallets in that if you lose the wallet and or it becomes corrupted, you potentially lose your encrypted data. So you need to be very careful with the wallets, how they're backed up, who has access to them, and last but not least, who has access to the wallet password. Very important for PCI to set up separation of duties. So kind of moving through a few different steps here, but the important 3 steps: creation of the wallet, and now we're inside a few different responsibilities, but the primary payment setup responsibility leads you to this screen here for the system security options. First thing you do, you click the button for the wallet setup. That gives you an opportunity to set the location and the password of the wallet. Second, do you want to encrypt the card data? That's the account number. Say yes. The Oracle documentation here gets a little, we'll say, inconsistent. Oracle refers to sometimes encryption of supplemental data. Sometimes they're referring to full or partial encryption. So what this means is that we have the primary account number, the full 16-digit number that you see on the front of your credit card. The supplemental information would be your name, the name that appears on the card, as well as other information on the card. So when Oracle is referring to full encryption, they're referring to having answered this question to supplemental yes. Moving on, the immediate or scheduled encryption. Oracle gives you the ability to immediately, prior to the card holder data being written out to be encrypted, versus scheduled, which would basically wait until a concurrent program or a set of concurrent programs follows to encrypt data at a later point in time. Integrigy Corporation, we strongly recommend only using the immediate encryption mode. So we're talking a lot about encryption here. The masking of cardholder data is also one of the primary PCI requirements, and that is also set on the same screen here. Last but not least, prior to exiting this form here, you really make sure you need to remember to click the Apply button. So after clicking Apply, the next screen here would be the need to, if you have any existing cardholder data, for example, if you are going through, even if you are just trying to encrypt corporate cards, and for corporate cards, for example, that you already defined that you want to protect, those will be in clear text until you run the concurrent request set encrypt sensitive data. So this request set has a number of subsequent programs, and these will then go through and encrypt any existing cardholder data. In the white paper, we also note that there is a complementary set of de-encryption programs and a de-encryption concurrent request set. And one of our recommendations that we strongly recommend is to disable those de-encryption programs. They should not be run unless there's a specific need. So the 3 steps that we went through, we created the wallet, we then registered the wallet, we gave instructions as to whether or not we wanted full or partial encryption, and as to whether or not we wanted to do immediate or scheduled encryption. So just kind of summarizing this a little bit, we talked primarily about requirement 3.4 here, that you need to find all locations of credit card data. So we walked through the secure payment repository and where in Oracle, it's stored and how the standard functionality protects that. Some other things to keep in mind is that you need to think about logs, and you need to think about retention and archiving. And the key point on this slide here with regard to 3.1 is that the various, we'll say, subscribing Oracle applications to the secure payment repository, there is no one purge and archive program. Each one of those subscribing applications will have a separate means of purging. The PCI Council has a recommendation for 18 months. This is one area where you would need to work very closely with internal and external counsel as to the requirements for your specific situation. Custom tables, maintenance tables, these are areas where we commonly, when we're first working with a customer, that we might identify through our sensitive data finding utilities. You can't be PCI compliant unless, again, everywhere the card holder data is present that is protected. So you need to think about custom tables, maintenance tables, interface, and logs. Test and development, 6.4.3 here, very clear, very strong requirement from PCI that you cannot have production or live cardholder data in test or development. This requires you to, when you clone to create non-prods, that you first and foremost rotate the encryption keys, and if you've copied that wallet down, you need to think about a secure wipe, not just deleting the wallet, but is securely wiping, such that all existence of the encryption key for production is safely protected. You then need to think about scrambling, purging, and or removing cardholder data. So this is an area where there are a number of options, and after working with counsel for requirements, usually can find a few different solutions.
Thanks, Mike. Very good and very in-depth information.
Back to Steve.
Thanks, Mike. Very good information, very in-depth. And the white paper has even more details, especially where a lot of information where you can't find it anywhere about how the encryption actually works and some of the things that you need to do to make sure it's securely done in Oracle E-Business Suite. So now what we'll talk about is a few of the other major requirements. Encryption is a significant PCI DSS requirement, but there are a number of other ones that are fairly meaningful. Requirement 2 starts talking about configuration overall and how you do things securely within the environment. Some of the keys ones that are relevant to Oracle E-Business Suite are 2.1 and 2.2 is changing a lot of the defaults, making sure you have a secure configuration. 2.2 requires a configuration standard be adhered to. They recommend some things like the NIST guides, NSA guides, the DoD STIG guides, CIS. Those really aren't applicable for the Oracle E-Business Suite, but the key guide would be the Oracle Secure Configuration Guide for Oracle E-Business Suite. Integrigy knows a lot about that because we wrote most of that document for Oracle. So you should be really taking that document and securing your environment and making sure you're compliant with almost every requirement in that Secure Configuration Guide. Requirement 2.3 is an actually interesting requirement that and how it is applicable to the E-Business Suite. The requirement basically says that whenever you have network traffic and an administrator is using that network connection, that has to be encrypted. Interesting to note with PCI DSS, internally within your network, except across wireless links, you don't have to encrypt credit card numbers across your internal network. If it's external or across a wireless network, it does, but not internally. But the key is all administrator traffic. So whenever an administrator using, let's say, the sysadmin account or system administrator responsibility connects to the application, that has to be encrypted. Well, you really can't take that administrator traffic and all your other users and divide them up. They all use the same connection. So that means all your front end should be using SSL. So when you go to your E-Business Suite environment, when you type in HTTP, that really has to be HTTPS. Another area is SQLnet encryption. So your DBAs are connecting to the database, and when they connect to the database, they are probably using SQL Plus from a remote machine potentially. Well, that traffic has to be encrypted too according to 2.3 because it's administrator traffic. DBA traffic is administrator traffic. So now you have to be actually enabling SQLnet encryption for all your database connections. Fortunately, Oracle just released in the last 6 months, the SQLnet encryption used to be part of Advanced Security option. That's now a free option. Oracle changed the licensing for it, so that's actually not an add-on expense anymore. So it's very doable, but these things take a little bit of effort. You have to make sure you're doing it correctly. Additional requirements, one that really gets a lot of E-Business Suite environments is Oracle critical patch updates come out on a quarterly basis. PCI 6.2, the requirement's very clear. You need to be applying security patches on a very regular basis, and if they're critical security patches, within 1 month of release. You don't really find many Oracle E-Business Suite environments that are applying the database security patch, the E-Business Suite security patch, and the application server security patches within 30 days. That's very rare for an E-Business Suite environment, but that's basically the requirement for 6.2. There is a little bit of a leeway if they aren't, quote, critical security patches. So you can have a little leeway, but that definition is really up to the beholder. And so usually it's 30 to 90 days. You might be able to have a little leeway and say, well, we can do it within 2 months because they aren't critical. But really, the Oracle security patches are almost always critical security patches, at least from our perspective, and knowing what those vulnerabilities are and how they can impact your environment. So this one is fairly difficult to match in the PCI environment, but that's the requirement. It's very clearly stated within 1 month of release for critical security patches, and all the recommendations, if you look through the PCI documentation, all security patches should be applied within 3 months. And very few organizations apply E-Business Suite critical patch updates within 3 months. So this one is a big change for a lot of organizations. Another requirement that impacts some Oracle E-Business Suite environments is if you're running external E-Business Suite modules, and an external E-Business Suite module would be iSupplier, iStore, iRecruitment, iSupport. Those must be protected, and you have one of two options. You actually have to do a penetration test, or you can use a web application firewall. There are a number of well-known web application firewalls out on the market. Unfortunately, none of them do really anything for the e-business suite. They have no rules specialized for e-business suite, and you can basically put them in front and they'll provide you minimal protection. They might be able to pick up a generic attack, but they really wouldn't do anything specific for e-business suite. Integrigy actually has our own web application firewall that's highly optimized for e-business suite. We actually wrote it before Oracle had their DMZ configuration, and we've optimized it ever since. And the purpose of AppDefend is it basically blocks known security vulnerabilities and all the known security issues and weaknesses within the e-business suite, and it does satisfy the requirements for 6.6. So either you have to have an annual penetration test, or we'd recommend you install AppDefend, which is highly cost effective. And we also satisfy some of the logging requirements as part of 10. That's built into AppDefend, so it kind of gives you two benefits in one. Another area that is a struggle for a lot of organizations is PCI is pretty specific. They want unique IDs for all access. And the reason for this is PCI DSS has a very strong forensics component. They want to have the information and know what happened in case of a breach. So there's really two key tenets to PCI. One is protect it before you lose it, and two is if you do lose it, we want to know what happened. So we want to have those controls in place in terms of logging, access controls, unique IDs. So if someone goes in and steals all the credit card data, we can try to track back who stole that and who's responsible. So one of the key tenets there is if you're trying to track on who's doing stuff, don't use generic IDs. Unfortunately, if you're thinking about Oracle Business Suite environment, you've got the sys and system and apps accounts at the database layer. You've got the sysadmin account at the application layer. Most organizations are using an Oracle Apple Manager accounts pretty frequently at the OS level. Can you take any of those accounts and get back to the actual person who did it? That becomes a very hard thing to do. And so there's a lot of different ways you can try to do that. Put in jump servers, put in additional firewall controls. Make sure when they're going to the Unix level that they're using a tool like PowerBroker or sudo from an individual account into the Oracle account. So there's a lot of things you can do, but it's not straightforward and there's not many great easy solutions there. Another strong emphasis is logging monitoring. Again, they want the forensic impact. So PCI DSS wants that audit trail of who's connecting to what's happening in your environment. And so it's not only logging the information, it's getting it off the environment. So they want it to go to a centralized logging server. So when we're talking about logging and auditing within PCI, that information has to go pretty quickly to a centralized logging server that can be protected and retained. They want 18 or 13 months of retention for all audit and logging information. So you're trying to get out of the database. So doing the database audit trail to a table is not sufficient. It really has to be going out. And Oracle actually provides a fairly easy way to do that because the Oracle database logging does support syslog. So you can actually take the database audit trail and send it out to syslog and then have that pipe it right to a logging solution like ArcSight, like Splunk. One of the issues, though, you'll run into is, well, there's the database logs. Well, how about the application layer? You have to actually have an audit trail of who's logging into the application and what are they accessing in the application. Natively, Oracle Business Suite logs that into the table, the FND logins table. You can see what forms and things like that, what responsibilities people are using. But those are all going into a table. Now you have to come up with a solution on how to get that into external logging solution. That's one way that AppDefend helps from Integrigy, that we actually do that for you. So it never gets written to the log. It actually goes out right away to the logging solution. But again, here's another issue that you have to now tackle, come up with some custom solutions because Oracle doesn't provide it. Most of the auditing required by PCI is fairly easy. They want basically logins, logoffs, who's using privileged accounts, failed logins, changes to the auditing, basic change management, so who's creating or changing system level objects. The most difficult audit trail that PCI requires is all individual accesses to cardholder data. So whenever anyone's selecting from some of the key tables that hold the credit card numbers, you have to have an audit trail of that. So that becomes a little bit more of a performance issue. You have to make sure you're carefully designing that. Some organizations go as far as actually buying third-party database auditing solutions to actually do that level of auditing. So again, here's another area where you have to do some effort and do some solution and design work in order to how do you best audit your e-business suite environment. Requirement number 11 does require you to perform periodic penetration tests, especially if you have internet-facing applications. We also recommend you use a firm that understands Oracle E-Business Suite. We work with a lot of different clients who actually come to us after they've hired a generalist pure security firm to do an E-Business Suite audit, and they come up with all these findings that aren't applicable to the Oracle E-Business Suite. When you do an Oracle E-Business Suite penetration test, there's a lot of things you want to look at, but there's a lot of things that are non-standard that a typical just pure penetration tester wouldn't know. So you probably want to find a firm that actually has some experience in the Oracle E-Business Suite that you hire to do your penetration test. File integrity monitoring is also another requirement under 11. So this is basically looking at your file system and saying what's changing over time, which configuration files are changing. Again, PCI wants to know what changes are happening in the environment. Did a hacker get in and actually change a file? Because they want that forensic audit trail to say, yeah, they hacked in, then they changed this configuration file, and then they were able to do this, and so at least you have that information about what's happening. The biggest problem in the e-business suite is there's over 500,000 files in a standard Oracle e-business suite environment. So to do the file integrity monitoring on that becomes very difficult. The InstTop actually helps the situation quite a bit because Oracle centralized a lot of the key configuration files in there. But still, you're getting a lot of just changes, lots of log files, lots of concurrent request files being generated. So you actually have to tune the file integrity monitoring really well for an Oracle e-business suite environment, so you just don't get millions of false positives every day. And we've had a lot of situations where we're working with clients that they just turn it on, and they're like, "Oh my God, we got 100,000 file changes a day on e-business suite." I'm like, yeah, that's what happens, and this is what you have to do. You turn off a lot of log files, you turn off the concurrent requests directories and things like that, but you concentrate in on the configuration files. What matters in my Oracle e-business suite environment to do file integrity monitoring? So as we said before, PCI DSS is an ongoing process. You have to spend a lot of effort up front to make sure your environment's secure, you're putting in and meeting the requirements, you're encrypting the credit card numbers. But there's a lot of ongoing tasks, making sure that you're applying security patches, making sure you're running your vulnerability scans, rotating wallets and keys, and those type of things. So this is a whole, there's policies and procedures that are pretty significant as part of PCI DSS, and it impacts a lot of the Oracle e-business suite on how you manage the environment and how you operate it moving forward on a daily basis. And so these are just kind of some of the different tasks that we've identified for previous clients on things that you need to be doing and how this fits into your standard operational and maintenance procedures. So that was an overview of PCI DSS in the Oracle e-business suite environment. And also everyone on this call today will be getting a copy of our white paper tomorrow. That really goes into this information a little bit more. We actually go through each of the PCI DSS requirements in detail and pick out all those that are applicable to an Oracle e-business suite environment and give you a little bit of an information about how you need to comply with that requirement for an e-business suite environment. So now we'll open up to questions and answers.
Thank you, Steve. We have some questions here. The first one being, does the Oracle credit card encryption cause any performance problems?
We've run it with a number of clients, and we've actually never seen a performance issue at all. And typically what happens with the credit card numbers is it's not a massive processing. You may do end-of-day processing and read a couple hundred or maybe a couple thousand, but you're never going through and decrypting all. Say you had 1 million. You'd never go through and decrypt them all and use them all that way. Oracle's also put in some optimizations into the encryption process that it actually hashes the credit card numbers too. So if you ever have to search or do anything with a credit card number and look it up, you can actually do that very efficiently by using the hash, and so you're not having to decrypt large number of card numbers ever. So we've never seen a performance issue, and it works really well. We've been actually very happy. But Oracle went through and rewrote all the code that actually touched credit card numbers to make it work. So there was a huge effort on Oracle's part to change and encrypt the credit card numbers.
Okay, next question. Is tokenization of credit card numbers supported?
Oracle natively does not support tokenization. So if you want to pull Oracle eBusiness Suite out of your PCI DSS scope, tokenization is the way. And what tokenization is instead of actually getting the credit card number, you get a token, which is meaningless. You have to somehow go back to the original credit card number, and you don't have the token. You have only the token in the Oracle eBusiness Suite. You don't actually now have the credit card number. So if you use tokenization purely in an Oracle eBusiness Suite environment, you don't have to be PCI DSS compliant because someone else is holding that credit card number. And there's a couple different solutions. Card Connect has a tokenization solution that supports eBusiness Suite. And those work fairly well. There's a lot of caveats, a lot of limitations, and exactly how you're processing credit card numbers matters. But a lot of organizations have been successfully used tokenization to remove Oracle eBusiness Suite out of PCI DSS compliance. It does cost a little bit of money and a little bit of effort, and there's some limitations, but that is definitely something to look at and explore in terms of trying to avoid full PCI DSS compliance.
Next one. Do you have any cheat sheets for validating eBusiness Suite is within compliance with PCI DSS 3.0, specifically technical?
At this point, we don't have any cheat sheets like that. We do have a security quick reference that's available on our website. Our real cheat sheet and quick thing is our product AppSentry, which basically will do a scan against Oracle eBusiness Suite and tell you all the security issues, tell you if you're PCI DSS, everything that we can validate from just a pure SQL check, looking at files and things like that. So that's what we do. We use our internal product, AppSentry, on our own internal assessments to help automate that and do that as quickly as possible.
Interesting is right before you answered that question came over, would AppSentry include tests to facilitate PCI compliance?
Yes, and so AppSentry, we do as much as we can. There's a lot of different things in apps in PCI DSS that are policy and procedure oriented, so we try to check those, we try to pull that information. So we're probably getting 60–70% of the way. We're giving you all the hard and fast things. Have you applied security patches? Have you changed the passwords? Have you enabled encryption? Is the encryption option set correctly? Those are all the things that we're checking and some of the key requirements.
Next one. For our corporate credit cards, do we have to be PCI compliant? And I believe the answer is no.
Yes, we talked about that, and so the answer is no. So if you're just on this call because you've got corporate credit card numbers, hopefully we saved you $250,000 today.
Well, Steve, I believe that wraps it up for the day. We appreciate everybody taking the time and energy to join with us today, and also be sure to stop by this next month. I think it's February the 13th. Our next e-learning webinar, which will be a guide to auditing and logging in the Oracle eBusiness Suite. So again, thank you very much, and to everybody, have a great rest of the week. Take care.